Hi there, welcome to some breaking news within the Noah Presgrove case. When looking back retrospectively, there have been some photos found, not screenshots, because they were taken from a mobile phone, in regard to what Elisha Lee has said in the past, Kaden Pressy's mom, and it kind of turns the tables upside down with what we've learned in between, and with the Mikey Lair Snapchat post, and some additional details too. Don't go anywhere today. I'm going to present to you what Elisha had said at one point previously, interpret it, analyse, break it down, compare and contrast to some events that had gone on at the party and amidst the news of Noah's death, and then see where it leads from there. Because the current themes and topics have been around Elisha and or Kaden, and they're not quite in sync with one another. Considering there was a point in time where Kaden Pressy or Elisha had mentioned that I don't remember everything, but my mom does because I told her about it at the start, and then the mom has remembered since. So when Kaden doesn't remember something, the mom feeds it back to Kaden as a reminder. But sometimes that power dynamic isn't always a good thing, and the information memory retrieval may not always be accurate enough. And of course, there'll be people in the community that'll be more skeptical than me and think it could be done for more dodgier reasons. But before we jump in too far there, welcome to everyone that's watching this live premiere. Share your thoughts, opinions and reactions in the live chat box on the right hand side of the screen. And if you want to leave any comments down below, drop them under the video. That will help with spreading awareness of the video so more people can see it. And if you've got any questions or additional thoughts, just leave them below and we can respond back later and see where that goes, new ideas or new answers. If you want to catch up on recent coverage by me, you'll find a full playlist with all the videos available, top right corner where the I symbol is. And if you want to support this channel in an alternative, practical and anonymous way, below in the pinned comments underneath is by me with the PayPal link. So recent time, there's been some heavy stuff we've been going through, and we'll continue that today. Very important, make sure to stick about. The order of what we'll do it in is I'll show you it from the point of view of the screenshots. As for the comments, not too much there at this moment, so we don't need to get too heavy into that. I would like to focus more on my thoughts today and then apply it to the map and the Mikey Lair snap. Could possibly incorporate the project what I've already done in the past, where I had the evidence-based timelines, timestamps from snaps and photos taken, in which I added the photos in on the project itself. I think that's probably a cleaner, more efficient way to do it today than going from a slideshow photo to then having to load up the projects. I can do it all in one go. So yeah, be sure to stick around. Let's begin this video. As you can see on screen, this is not a screenshot. More so, this, I believe, is a photo taken from a person's mobile phone looking at maybe a computer screen. That's why it looks blurry and washed out. But don't worry, I can see the text on the screen and I will read it out to you in case you struggle. But I think one thing what we need to acknowledge, which really does stand out in an interesting way, is where it came from. A different Facebook page or group called Noah Needs Peace. I've never seen or heard that before. Does that group or page exist on Facebook still till this day? I'm guessing it's like a private gated community. I don't know why we've got so many subsection groups. It gets so confusing and out of hand in a way. I can understand the odd ones on the side if there's like some extra sensitive details, but then what about the family's point of view? What do they think? So Noah Needs Peace says underneath it, Shannon Scott, and I believe Shannon Scott is the friend to Elisha Lee. Said 2 hours ago, but I believe from what other people have said, this is in the past, old comments. And if it's in the past, could opinions and thoughts have changed since? Maybe, but this ain't the literal early days of 2023, a few days after the death of Noah, and the memory's all fresh. It's not quite that. So it will be interesting to see the details provided here by Elisha. Do they stack up with what Kaden Pressy has said? Because at the end of the day, Kaden Pressy is the one to know more than Elisha. Kaden was there, Elisha was not. Some people have said that some comments of Elisha have been deleted over time and on Reddit. I don't know if this is an example of that, but nevertheless, let's look at this archived material. Elisha responding to Shannon, saying, I would like to know why my son's friends, with an S, that basically means, just to clear up for names, I would like to know why my son, Kaden Pressy, more specifically, Kaden's friends, who drove to the scene behind another certain friend. That certain friend would be Jack Newton, because Jack came to the house telling people the news and then leaving quick. Then Kaden, with the other guys, followed after. But how it's worded here by Elisha, them being behind one another, that sounds a bit exaggerative, because Jack only popped in quick and left very quick, and then 2 to 5 minutes spent when Kaden was trying to look for his other shoe, hopping about, and then just got into the vehicle. So you wouldn't have been behind Jack when driving along, because Jack was there and then left quick, and then Kaden came after. So that's one maybe inconsistency we could label here, or exaggerative language by Elisha, right? I am breaking it down bit by bit as we go along, because it's easier. So yeah, driving to the scene, which is the highway, behind a certain friend, that certain friend Jack Newton, that Kaden's friends are all saying Noah was naked. My son Kaden said Noah had black basketball shorts on. When he asked these boys about why they didn't tell the detectives that, they stopped talking or don't respond to Kaden. Oh, so is that how the breakdown in communication and the split and how the distance from one another? See, I don't know if it was worded by Kaden Pressy specifically, but it was definitely mentioned on YouTube on one of the interviews that there was a divide and that Kaden kind of like lost his so-called friends with time. And when it came to his best friend, which was Jack Newton, Elisha on the sideline believed, or at least her thoughts were, it's best if Kaden stays away from Jack because Jack is bad news for Kaden, her son. Whether there was a direct influence there or not, there was a split between Jack Newton and Kaden Pressy. And then shortly afterwards, that is what followed with the other friends to Kaden distancing themselves. But how Elisha words it here is more so it happened by Kaden simply asking the boys, the guys, and then they stopped talking. Is that necessary? Why did that happen? And when we talk about the boys, who are they exactly? Well, it's Isaac Rojas, Mikey Lair, and Brylan Sweat, because they were the ones supposedly that went along with Kaden to the highway. Like Kaden Pressy was the one to be driving and took the boys, the guys, to the scene to have a look themselves. Moving on, Elisha says, the other shoe Noah Presgrove had on was my son's, Kaden, the Hey Dude shoe. And that seems somewhat consistent with what we've heard with time. However, some people in the community have said that Kaden at one point referred to it as Noah was wearing Kaden's pair of Hey Dude shoes. But from what we've heard elsewhere and in the autopsy report and the official news articles is that Noah had one of Kaden's Hey Dude shoes and Noah had one of his own Adidas shoes. As for Kaden's other shoe, it was still at the house, near to Kaden. As for Noah's other Adidas shoe, nowhere to be seen, which is weird. However, it was Jack Newton in Partisan True Crime interview that mentioned that Noah only had one shoe on and his Adidas one was off his body and possibly nearby. That could link more to a possible hit and run when you get hit and your shoes go flying off, or at least one of them does. Not that I'm saying Jack worded it that way to push the agenda of a hit and run, because already by then it was ruled out. But It's just weird how Jack would go against the grain when it's normally Kaden Pressy that stands out against everyone, and people call Kaden out for that and being wrong. For Jack to do the same thing, but to do with the shoes. Is it interesting? Is it not? When most people say that Noah had a pair of mismatched shoes, and it was Jack of all people down the line on Parts in True Crime that made the reference to one shoe on, one shoe off. Weird. Very. Anyway. What else do we have? He said he was asleep, and when he woke up, his shoe was missing. So unfortunately, Elisha is not mentioning names, so it's just a bit all over the place. So basically, Elisha means my son Kaden said he was asleep, and when Kaden woke up, supposedly at 5:15, his shoe was missing. And why would Kaden be looking for his missing shoe or trying to find it? Because at 5:15 is the news of when being woken up, as Elisha mentions below. Kaden was woken up by a certain friend, and that certain friend is Jack Newton. I don't know why we're being so, cryptic with hiding names, but granted, if this is in the past, maybe you couldn't mention names at the time. But if it's a private group, then maybe there's some leniency. But at that time, at that point, Jack Newton was barging through the door, screaming, Noah's dead. Kaden shot up and ran outside after said friend, Jack, said friend got into his truck and drove off. Oh my God, it's language and wording. My son Kaden got in his Jeep, and so did 2 other boys. That is a big problem, and hopefully other people pick up on it. Is it a slip of the tongue? Is it a mistake? Was Elisha confused at the time? Was there miscommunication? Because what Kaden Pressy has told us, the general public on Parts in True Crime, and probably the police interview too, I think so, from my memory, but I definitely remember it in the Parts in True Crime, that how Kaden Pressy worded it, Jack burst through the door announcing Noah's dead. And before then, Jack was already running back out because he didn't want to leave his friend Noah alone. Alone in general, or alone with strangers, right? So Jack's already getting back to the highway by then. Kaden, when woken up at the time of 5:15, said he had to wake up the other guys, the boys, the Brylans, the Mikeys, the Isaacs, supposedly. Interesting, because that burst through the door and that loud bang was enough to wake Kaden up, but not the guys nearby. Well, that's interesting. You'd think the other guys would wake up, unless they were in a very deep sleep compared to Kaden. But despite that, Kaden searching around for his other shoe 2 to 5 minutes, roughly, at least 2 minutes minimum, searching about for his shoe. Couldn't find it, gives up, screw it, goes to his red Cherokee with the boys and drives to the highway. So whilst driving to the highway, Jack would have probably already been back there. So for Elisha to say that Kaden ran outside after Jack, Kaden never said that. Kaden never said about running outside to follow up on his friend, his best friend, Jack Newton, to inquire more details or to chase after him or to follow him down. No, because there was some time spent with Kaden trying to look for his other shoe. And by the time of finding that other shoe, Jack would have been back at the highway likely. Or at least that's how you could interpret it from how Kaden worded it himself, which differs to the way Elisha describes it, which isn't great. But the major problem is about my son got in his Jeep, and so did 2 other boys, likely Brylan Sweat and Isaac Rojas. But what about the third guy? What about Mikey Lair? Because he was there too. That's what Kaden said. Kaden said Mikey tagged along. But as we know, that Snapchat post highlights Mikey was at the house. Kaden was at the highway, possibly with Brylan and Isaac. But that would make no sense whatsoever and be very odd. And if you don't know why, I will explain it later. But let's just acknowledge the other comments here, well, the continuation of it. Elisha says, when they drove a short distance to where Noah was said to be found, said friend, I'm guessing Jack Newton, was standing besides a man driving a white service truck whilst Noah's body lay on the side of the highway. What we've learned since is that there was a white service truck, but it didn't have the same characteristics as what Kaden described completely. And that the service truck that was present was driven by Cash Alsop, I think chief volunteer firefighter, or at least part of the volunteer firefighters. Cash Alsop in his white service truck. Whether it had a crane or not, I can't remember which way round it was. Probably it didn't have a crane, but Kaden said he saw a service truck with a crane, but Cash did not have a crane on his service truck. But what's significant about all that is Cash was there in his service truck, but at 6 a.m. onwards later. That if Cash was the one to come face to face with Kaden and have that conversation and be yelled at to leave, that would have to have been at 6 a.m. onwards. But Kaden is going on about 5:21 arriving at the highway, 5:30 being told to leave. So could there be a mix-up in time? Could there be a mix-up in accounting for who was there or what was there in the description of it, which was actually present but at a later time compared to what Kaden believes? Different ways of looking at it, yeah. But let's just acknowledge the rest here. That the service truck, whilst Noah's body lay on the side of the highway. My son Kaden saw Noah wearing black basketball shorts. He was not naked. The other two boys with him, likely Brylan and Isaac, saw this as well, witnessed the shorts. The said friend Jack Newton saw this as well. The man standing besides the service truck saw this as well. Well, that man besides the service truck, is that Cash Alsop, maybe? Now, it continues on. We'll go on to the next slide. It's not quite clear, granted, where it says, my son shouted at, but I'll do my best to show you and read. My son Kaden was shouted at by the man, I guess of the white service truck, to leave. My son asked if Noah was okay and was told to leave. The police were coming by the man standing next to the service truck. And Noah, my son and the other two boys went back to the house. No times mentioned, but the description's roughly the same. However, of course, if it was true, Kaden's timeline of 5:15 onwards, 5:21 present at scene, 5:30 told to leave because police were coming. Well, when were police coming? At around 5:30? No. At 5:43 to 5:53 is when the first official calls were made, meaning before 5:43, before Tyler H and Tyler Hardy were passing on by. Anyone before that, if Kaden's timeline is correct, would make everything look dodgy and suspicious, because why would a white service truck driver at 5:30 say to Kaden, you need to leave, the police are coming? Oh, but by the way, no one's actually called them. Yeah, that's why it's major. That's why it's important to figure out if Kaden's early timeline is correct or not. And with the inconsistencies with what Elisha is recounting or telling in regard to what Kaden had said in other ways on Partners in True Crime at least, it doesn't gel quite well. But what Elisha is wording in some ways actually links more to the Mikey Lair snap, but then that has its own problems because some will know and others won't. And I'll try and make that clearer soon or so. So yeah, Noah was not naked. The detectives said my son was the only person that said Noah was naked. Why would his shorts be off or taken off? Why are these so-called friends not telling the truth on what they saw? Something like that. It's hard to see because the text is very faded. I'll give you my interpretation right now, and then we'll head on over. So an important factor to acknowledge first and foremost is that particular post-thread comment is more so in the past. Things could have changed since. More so, maybe the attitudes or responses from certain said party goers, such as the two other boys, Brylan and probably Isaac Rojas, who, as we saw mentioned by Elisha, at the time, the detective or one of the detectives mentioned that Kaden was the only person to acknowledge that Noah was wearing black shorts and that the two other boys did not acknowledge it. But did they acknowledge that Noah was naked then? Or was it just no comment? If it's no comment, there is still that possibility and chance that the likes of Brylan and Isaac are in line with Kaden, who may believe or may know it to be true that Noah had some black shorts on, but they've just not spoken out, or they didn't at the time. But then again, when it's mentioned that the detective said, well, Kaden's the only one to mention the black shorts, the other two guys did not. Does that mean the other two guys did not, during an official interview, acknowledge it? Or does it mean on the surface level, at the beginning, informal first-hand statements, aside from interviews, or like online presence? You could understand like online presence, some people may have witnessed what another person saw. That other person talks about it openly online because they can, or because they just want to and they don't care. But the two other people that saw the same exact thing are keeping their mouth closed. And with that silence, that other person out there could be thinking, come on guys, you know what you saw what I saw, so speak up, do something. Because if you don't, that's going to make me look bad. I'm going to stand out and look like I'm wrong when it's 2 against 1. But they could all be in line with the same thoughts and what they've witnessed, but 2 out of the 3 may not be willing to match that same energy level as that one particular person because they've just got more self-control, or they just don't want to speak out because they don't want to become a target, like maybe Kaden supposedly did. I know there's been some suggestions along the way in the background by others saying how, well, you know, Mikey or this person or that person can't speak out because they're afraid of bad things happening, they're scared for their life, etc. That's on behalf of what someone has said, like a second, third-hand representative, which I don't think is good enough because it's just words. It's not so much hard evidence. Well, granted, there might be the odd screenshot somewhere, but you know, we don't want to trigger Justin Roy because then it'll just go on and on and on. And then, oh yeah, but remember that screenshot, remember about Mikey, and remember about it, where they're at. But then at the same time, the confidentiality of it, trying to keep up with it all, bloody hell. But at the end of the day, the mention of Kaden has acknowledged black shorts, the other 2 have not. Have the other 2 acknowledged at least that Noah was naked? And if not that, well then it can be one of 2 ways. Either they know it to be true, that black shorts, or they know it true to be naked, but they just didn't acknowledge it outwards or publicly. They've kept their mouth shut at the time to protect themselves, protect the case, whatever it may be. But ultimately, I think the main issue is, because we've got more material to work with, and with what I've already previously done, is a mention of 2 guys with Kaden at the highway. So where was Mikey Lair then? Because I know no names were mentioned by Elisha, just 2 guys, and those 2 guys could be absolutely anyone. But if we're basing it off what Elisha says, based off what Kaden has originally said, and them 2 communicating in the background as you would, mother and son, that when Elisha refers to guys, it's going to be Brylan, Isaac, or Mikey. And because there's only 2, you know, is it Brylan and Mikey? Is it Isaac and Mikey? Is it Brylan and Isaac and Mikey's left out? That would make more sense for Isaac, it would make more sense for Mikey Lair to be left out, whilst Brylan and Isaac tag along with Kaden, because of that hard evidence of Mikey being still at the house at 5:27. But based off emotions and body language, it does not make sense whatsoever. Let's head on over to the maps right now, and I'll make it very clear. Hopefully you're familiar with this timeline and these dates and whatever and numbers. There's a lot on screen. I did actually incorporate it with a 2-in-1. I know some people wanted screenshots of some previous stuff. Just to highlight it over here, this is separate in its own way in regard to, as highlighted in some of the stars at least, like officially backed up. I mean, I think I've got an example here, hopefully. No, I don't. Great start. But there will be in some places where I tried adding photos if I could. But I just wanted to say that these we're not really looking at today. I can always edit it at another point, okay? It's the ones more so down here. And these particular ones where it's red, highlighted with a star, means it can be backed up with hard evidence, more so photos and snaps and screenshots and timelines, etc. Example being 242. And I believe the reason, so the reason why I didn't add on photos over here to these stars, such as the 151, which is backed up with hard evidence, is because basically it's the one down here at 242 where I added the photo. Can you see that there? I know it's not the clearest. Maybe I could, well, actually, no, I don't really want to add it on because I don't know how public it is. This is Elisha's call logs made outwards, and the ones highlighted in blue is to do with Melissa, which is 151. I think a video or two ago I mentioned at 140 or 143, which was incorrect. It's actually 151 when Elisha called Melissa, and it was just a bit before that, probably 140. Yeah, 140 when Elisha tried calling Kaden, which is highlighted in the yellow. And then in terms of the one highlighted in pink, where it ends in 21, the final digits being 5021, because we have seen the uncensored version a few days ago. That highlighted in pink, middle of the screen, that phone call made by Elisha outwards was to JJ Bumphouse, but Elisha had said it was actually to her mother-in-law, but the mother-in-law, final four digits end different to JJ's, and JJ's link to this on screen. I know it's blurred out, but you would have seen it on the previous video. So that is really weird. Why would you lie about that? We're not directly here for that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up with some of the things attached onto here. 3:30, supposedly the time of when Noah had left to walk away from the house, whether he left the property or not. 3:41, when Jasmine Miller announced that Noah was missing at 3:41, clears daylight the time there, you see bottom corner of the screen. 4:30 is with Carter and Logan. 4:30 here, as you see. Returning back after trying to search for Noah, supposedly. So we got that there. And the main one, of course, at 5:27 a.m. Jasmine, Mikey, Logan in bed. And it was taken at different angles. We're just using the clearest one today. The ones taken at different angles were at the same time, but it does not give the, is it milliseconds, as in when it was taken, so one after the other. No big deal there. I do understand it. Hopefully other people do. Mikey is in bed at that point. As for whose bed or whose room, who knows? But Logan is taking the snap. We refer to it as the Mikey snap because that's what it's all centered about, but Logan appears to be the one who has taken it because she's holding the phone out, along with Jasmine Milan on the side. And the time of that being, as you see there, September 4th, day of Noah's death, but at 5:27 a.m. 5:27 a.m. And whilst I might not have all the times mentioned on this particular project, because not all of it is truly true backed up with hard evidence, and it might just be words, we're still referring to 5:15, Kaden, awoken, wakes up the other two guys. And this is where you'll notice it being a bit weird, because if we base it off what Elisha has said, granted no times given, But if we tie it in with Kaden and 5:15, that would basically mean that Jack burst through the door, announces Noah's dead. Kaden wakes up at least two other guys, Brylan and Isaac, who then eventually follow down to the highway area, roughly here, to check on in as to what's going on. Whilst they're here, Isaac and maybe Brylan or one of the two do cry because it's been upsetting. Kaden hugs them and says it'll be okay, it'll be fine. And that's at 5:21 onwards. 5:30 told to leave and go back to the house. And the girls are crying at the house, people are upset. Right. Well, if that's really the case, at 5:30, when told to leave, and Kaden is present in that moment, and Brylan and Isaac, well then Mikey must be at the house based off the Snapchat post, because there is hard evidence of that. So, yes, the Snapchat post can counter Kaden Pressy and say that Kaden is wrong when who was with Kaden at the time. But Elisha could be considered correct, as in only two of the guys followed Kaden to the highway, tagged along. The other guy, which was Mikey, even though it wasn't mentioned by Elisha, but you can interpret it as the other third guy, remained at the house. So Elisha's recounter things down on behalf of Kaden would tie more in line with the 5:27 snap of at least one of the guys still being at the house. But the reason why it's such a problem is because if at least at 5:15 the news was broken out at the house and everybody knew about it, it would mean everybody that was at that house woken up by Jack or woken up by Kaden, because I'm sure Kaden would have woken other people up like how he said, including the guys, most of them, if not all, they would know. And even if Mikey stayed at the house because it was too upsetting to go to the highway, then explain to me in this particular snap why they look happy. They are happy. They are laughing. I can't zoom in, unfortunately, because of it being on Google, but I have done videos in the past. I've zoomed in. I've showed you their faces. I've showed you it from different angles as well, because there is a different angled one, previous, already documented on my channel. But this is the clearest one, which shows Mikey awake with his eyes open, never went to sleep. At least at that point, didn't go to sleep, which is very important. And if it was true that, at 5:30 or around about 5:30, if Jack had woke up or was woken up by Jasmine amidst the news that Noah was at least missing, well, then that would mean they wouldn't know that he's dead. So 5:15 can't be correct then with what Kaden says. And that if Jack at 5:30 or around that was woken up or woke up himself and then realised he saw Mikey still awake, that would imply that Mikey never went to sleep. And if Mikey never went to sleep, well then at 5:27, a few minutes before, with his eyes being open, it kind of backs that up. But then it would go against Kaden Pressy, because Kaden Pressy worded it as Mikey was asleep, or at least asleep at certain points, because it required Kaden to have to wake up Mikey along with Brylan, along with Isaac. If Mikey was already awake at 5:15 or even woken up, then you'd think you'd be sad, and so would other people. So then why from 5:15 to 5:27, when some stay at the house, granted if they stayed at the house because they didn't want to go down to the highway, they didn't want to be traumatized, why'd they be taking a Snapchat like nothing ever happened? Why'd they be smiling and acting all happy? The body language does not match with the timing of the news of Noah's death, does it? And granted, you do have an earlier one, don't you, at 4:30. And this is to do with supposedly coming back after the search for Noah and it not being successful. Searching about would mean they were concerned to some extent and wanted to find him to check if he was okay. They weren't able to do so. So people could panic from that, of course. You see a Snapchat like this and you think, well, you've just come back from searching for your friend. You've not been able to find him. There was concern to look in the first place. It was not successful. So wouldn't you worry? Wouldn't you be more concerned now than what you were before? If results aren't successful and it's just a mystery as to where Noah's at, Wouldn't you be scared, panicking, calling police, reporting him as a missing person? Well, everyone reacts differently. That's one way. The other way of looking at it, though, would be because they supposedly know that Noah was used to walking off and on the odd occasion was away longer or made it back home somehow by other people or other means, did they interpret that was the case once again, so they didn't worry? Oh, it's just Noah. He normally does this. He always finds a way back home or somewhere, so we don't need to worry about him. He can handle himself. Maybe it's not the right mindset to have, but I'm just trying to interpret it. Nevertheless, a Snapchat was taken here. Are they smiling? Are they happy? Not really. Are they messing about, though, with poses? Probably. Nothing that deep. But what I'm getting at is the body language here is before the news of Noah's death. Is it around the time of Noah's death, though, officially? Who knows, because we don't know. It's been estimated that it was around 4 a.m. when Noah had passed away, from what Jack said, but supposedly Jack was told that by police, but it was lacking context from the screenshots in the past, which did not show that part of the conversation. But what I'm getting at is, if Snapchats are taken after Noah has walked off and is considered missing, there's a bit more leniency there in certain body language portrayed and displayed in snaps around that time onwards, as long as it's before the news of Noah's death coming out. If someone is absent from a party, you might be a bit concerned, or maybe you're used to it. You take photos, you laugh and joke, no big deal. If you take photos and do the same thing, laugh and smile, and it's 5, 10, 15 minutes after hearing the news of the death of that person, you could say, well, that's a bit more questionable and suspicious, right? This is at 4:30. Even if Kaden's timeline is wrong, as in it's too early on, as when the news came out, it's not true, it's actually later on. Well, it just means that anything before 5:15 could be considered a little bit more harmless. Not absolutely, but a little bit more harmless in the snaps and the meaning behind them. It's not as deep as you think. 4:30, well, that's before Kaden's timeline, before they found out of Noah's death. So if they were to laugh or smile or joke, that's normal because they're oblivious to what's going on. But 5:27, technically, they should be aware of Noah's death based off Kaden's timeline. They should be upset, they should be scared, they should be crying. Of course, not that they should, they could react differently to one another. Some may get closed off, some people may actually act out, laugh, nervous laughter. People react in all different ways, even if it is considered a bit abstract. Everyone reacts differently and copes differently. But just collectively, the presence, the ambience, the atmosphere here, the story it tells is that they're just simply hanging out, chilling or relaxing, completely oblivious to the fact that Noah's already dead, supposedly. And because all these people are from that party house, which Kaden was at too, if Kaden was alerted of Noah's death at 5:15, so should these people. So this snap probably shouldn't exist then, because why would they be taking a snap if they knew of Noah's death? There would be more concern, right? They shouldn't be taking it. They probably wouldn't be smiling or laughing at all. Could they be doing it as some kind of coping mechanism there, as a distraction? Maybe. But someone like Mikey tying in with Kaden's timeline, well, Mikey should have been there with Kaden at the highway, but he's not because he's at the house. So the timing of it all doesn't match up with Kaden. But how Elisha wears it, as in 2 boys at highway with Kaden, the third guy, not present, still at the house, when contrasting to what Kaden has said, being at the highway, would that probably be Mikey, the odd one out? But the body language tells a story, as in these people had no clue at the time of Noah's death. And if they did not have a clue whatsoever, and Kaden was in the same location, then you could imply that Kaden didn't have a clue as well at that time, and it was later on. So Elisha's inconsistencies, or at least not quite gelling with Kaden's, has kind of put Kaden into a bit of a hole and has kind of reinforced indirectly the 5:27 time stamp. Granted, Elisha did not mention the 5:15 time in her Facebook post, so it can be more lenient and link on and reinforce the 5:27 snap. But what I will say is, of course, if Elisha believes it to be 5:15 and indirectly agrees that 5:27 snap links and applies, well, you can't have both. Either it happened at 5:15 and this snap is wrong, or the Snapchat time is correct. People are oblivious to Noah's death at the time, and the announcement of Noah's death is at a later point, because people aren't going to be displaying this body language around that point, or at least in my opinion, at least. So, be sure to leave your comments down below. Let me know if you agree or not. It will be interesting to see how people interpret this video. I do feel that there will be a portion of people that will say, so, what's the big deal? Elisha was pretty much consistent with what Kaden has said at points in times. Well, no, because Kaden says 3 guys tagged along with him, and Elisha says 2 guys tagged along with him. There's one person, like one odd person out, isn't there? And it just so happens that Mikey was seen at the house at the time of when Kaden said he was at the highway. So there's conflict there. You would believe Kaden more over Elisha because Kaden was there, Elisha was not. But what doesn't help is, it's not the first time when we've run into like some problems of trying to understand the consistencies, or that there's lacking consistency. I mean, this is where my observation kicks in. I think there'll be some people that will also say we need to be lenient towards Elisha, and maybe Kaden to some extent. We need to be lenient. But how many times do we have to keep being lenient to one person or one side? Keep being lenient. Oh, they've slipped up. It's understandable. Keep being lenient. Oh, there's a memory relapse or a mistaken memory recollection. Well, that's just down to trauma. You know, it happens. Be lenient. Oh, well, it's been a long time, hasn't it? So what they say now may differ to what they said back then. What they said back then could be more fresh and true. What's said now could be false. Or what was said back then in the early days, they didn't know the whole story. There's for communication and it's improved since. But, you know, it's just time, and time can change people. So we've got to be lenient. The problem is, as lenient and positive and calming as people can be in their outlooks towards the likes of Elisha and Kaden, do they match that same energy with Jack Newton, who's been a little bit inconsistent? Or match it with Jasmine Milan, or match it with Avery or Carter? Because if not, then that makes it a bit one-sided, doesn't it? If you're going to be lenient, you need to be lenient to everyone for that balance at least. If you don't want to be lenient, fair enough, but don't be lenient and apply that to everyone then. Keep it balanced, and not many people want to do that or can really do that, and maybe that emotional connection kicks on in. Because maybe not always, but it's like first come, first serve, first impressions are most important. As long as you present yourself in a very positive, good way to start off with, and you build that rapport with people, anything that happens after that, negative, people are more likely to be defending you and lenient towards you and understanding of you. Whereas if you show up firsthand as a bit of a knob and then you mess up down the line, people are less likely to defend you. That's what it mainly comes down to. See, there was a point in time earlier when maybe Stevie Howard, Brooke Bounce Carter and some other people, how they may have worded their responses to people could be interpreted as insulting, rude words, calling people idiots or special or slow, etc. Not as much now. But like first impressions, some people can be innocent, but if they present themselves in a slightly unsavory or negative way, or that's how it's perceived by the other side, that leniency probably isn't going to be there the same as it is for how Kaden appeared and spoke up and presented himself, and Elisha too. Of course, not everyone would have had positive experiences with these different individuals, but those that had are probably more likely to think the best and think more positively of these people. See, there'd be like viewers on my channel, some from time to time. I know exactly what they're like because I see most of it. Because let's acknowledge one thing when it comes to behind closed doors, not physically, but just the concept of it, is I see things which others don't. I see the worst in people which other people don't see. So that's why I'm more cautious. That's why I'm not as lenient in that sense. And other people who have it better or better experiences with that said individual, all nice, positive outlook. And then I'm here thinking, really? Really? After what they've done and what they've said? But I'm not going to go all in or after others that see someone in a positive light, because that's all they know. Positive, nice, that person reacting nice, acting nice, positive, all nice rainbows, fluffy clouds. I don't see that shit. I see clouds, I see storms, I see reality. That's what separates me from most. But does it warrant being treated in other ways compared to everybody else? No. But it's probably best that I do see it, get it out of the way. But in terms of this case, people within the case, not the community, but the case itself, if I'm going to be lenient to one person, I need to be lenient to the other person, or at least at some point down the line, I need to be, or at least make an effort. And that's what I have been doing with time. But obviously, some people don't seem to acknowledge that, which is unfortunate. The situation with these comments by Elisha, even if they're old, it just doesn't look good on Kaden. And depending which way round it is it Kaden feeding the information to Elisha and then Elisha relaying it but incorrectly? Or was it true at the time with how it was worded? If it was true how it was worded at the time by the likes of Kaden first, and then Elisha passed it on, and then ever since Kaden has changed it, well then, depending if you say it goes hand in hand, or one more than the other, are they twisting and changing and adapting the story over time and in hopes that no one sees the previous comments made and statements? Depends. I mean, it also depends specifically when these comments came about, and if it can ever be provided as for additional context, obviously that's very much needed. But nevertheless, it is said by Elisha. Not quite the horse's mouth, as in Kaden, but close enough, and it's just not consistent enough. So that's a problem, in my opinion. So we'll leave it there for now. There are some additional things what we need to look into, but we need to separate them and concentrate on each one bit by bit so it's easier to listen to and look back on. So join me next time as we look at some other important details, but that's it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you want to hit the thumbs up and share the video, that'd be much appreciated. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.